When I do whole body PEMF therapy, I get very relaxed. I can't read. I don't want to read. Don't really care, right? I started producing a lot of endorphins and enkephalins and serotonin, and I just don't really care anymore. So that's a good place to be now and then, right?
When you want to go to sleep.
Well, especially when you want to go to sleep, or if you want to have a nap in the afternoon, or you want to veg out. You want to go into just a very relaxed state, just tune out for a little while and recharge and regenerate. So the earlier stages of dementia, then you start to have more significant memory changes, right? And you may have behavioral changes as well. Then you start to have problems with anger, you have problems with reactivity to environmental stimuli, you tend to overreact. So there's a progression.
Welcome to the PEMF Effect, where breakthrough science helps take control of your health. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, and I'm here to guide you in tapping into the power of PEMF therapy for recovery, vitality, and total body wellness. From overcoming chronic pain, optimizing brain health, boosting energy, and aging with strength, this podcast is your path to cutting-edge solutions for lifelong well-being. If you're ready to move beyond symptom management and tap into your body's natural healing ability, you're in the right place. Let's dive in. Today's episode is a previously recorded session from a summit where I was a guest speaker.
Welcome to this episode of the Reverse Alzheimer's Summit. I'm your host, Dr. Heather Sanderson. I'm really excited to introduce you to my friend, Dr. Bill Pawluk. He's an MD and a holistic doctor near Baltimore, Maryland. And his previous academic positions at Johns Hopkins and the University of Maryland included training in acupuncture, nutrition, herbs, energy medicine, homeopathy, hypnosis, bodywork, and lots of other therapies. But he's landed on PEMF as one of his favorite tools for helping people heal chronic disease. He's also written a great book called Power Tools for Health, and this year, Supercharge Your Health with PEMF Therapy. So I'm excited for him to explain what PEMF is to begin with and how it relates to Alzheimer's and the brain. Bill, welcome.
Thank you very much, Heather. I really appreciate it. I look forward to our chat today and hearing about your adventures.
Oh, thank you. So tell me, PEMFs get confused with EMFs. So there's pulsed electromagnetic frequency, and then there is electromagnetic frequency. Can you help us understand what the difference is and if we should be nervous about either of them?
I would generally say we probably shouldn't be nervous anyway. Who needs that state?
Right. Agreed.
We don't want to worry about it. But, if you do PEMF therapy, then you don't need to worry about it.
Nice.
Right, unless you happen to stand right in front of the microwave tower that's transmitting at huge wattages, right? If you're right there, right in front of it, well, okay, maybe. But the point is that they are different and they're confusing. So EMF stands for electromagnetic fields. And a lot of people do what you just did. It's not frequencies. They just assume it's frequencies because, frequencies, because that's what 5G is, frequencies. So that most people say frequencies, but it's electromagnetic fields. And I don't call them electromagnetic fields. I call them environmental magnetic fields. Okay, they're in the environment. They're designed for a whole lot of different purposes than pulsed magnetic fields. So EMFs are designed for communication, right? They're not designed for therapy. So as a result, what happens is we get confused then. Now, PEMFs, very different. EMFs are broadcast into the environment. They're sent out like light waves, like radar, like television signals and radio signals. They're broadcast 360 all over the place. And that means that they are basically what we call an open loop. They go out into space. So basically then EMFs are broadcast. And there's one important characteristic about EMFs too. They tend to be high frequency. And I thought I had silenced this. So what is going on here?
I can't really hear it.
Come through.
I can't hear them, Bill.
You can't hear them?
Nope. But I know it's distracting for you.
Well, if you can't hear them, then I hope that nobody else can hear them. Anyway, okay. So EMFs then basically are high frequency. High frequency is not good. We use high frequency in medicine to burn tissue, to coagulate tissue, right? To get rid of warts, to destroy nerves in the back. That's called radio frequency. And EMFs are basically like radio frequencies, extremely high frequencies. What that means is those wavelengths are extremely short and they're absorbed by the body. That's the principle behind a microwave oven, right? We're cooking stuff. So EMFs, basically microwaves, cook. So when you take a cell phone and you put it to your ear, you're cooking. And you notice when people take the cell phone away from their ears are often bright red, especially the longer it's been there. The other ear turns a little more red because of reflex vascular changes in the body, but this one is very red. And if you do this all day long with a cell phone to your ear that's broadcasting and receiving, then you're essentially cooking that side of your head. And we now know that there's an increased risk of acoustic neuromas in people who have a cell phone to the side of their head for long periods of time, not over a day or a week. You're talking about months usually. And there are people who go around with cell phones attached to their heads all day long. So we should never be doing cell phones to our heads unless they're on those air tubes. Earbuds are better. Wi-Fi, Bluetooth is better, but it's still being broadcast. So what happens then is that's cooking as well. It's not good for you. Now, PEMFs are not designed for communication. They're designed for healing. They're designed to help the body. And the major difference is that one is broadcast in the environment, as we call it, open loop. And the other one is, this is my thumb is the wire that carries the current that produces a magnetic field. And this is called the right-hand rule. So that's the wire. And every time the current goes through that wire and it can pulse, there's a pulse of the magnetic field. So that's why it's called pulsed electromagnetic field. So every time there's a pulse, there's an increase in the magnetic field, perpendicular to the flow of the current. And what happens to that current? It goes out and comes right back. Goes out and comes right back. Yes, it goes out into the environment, but it collapses right back on itself with every single pulse. It's not going out into space, right? It's a closed loop. Okay, that current and that wire then controls that magnetic field pulsing. So it's designed then to pulse into the body, and then when it pulses into the body, it creates charge in the body. So the electric or the magnetic field is a principle of physics called Faraday's law and Maxwell's equations. And so there's physics associated with all this. And according to Faraday's law, Faraday discovered this himself in the 1800s. When you pass a pulsing magnetic current past a coil wire with a light bulb attached to it, you pass the current through it, light bulb lights up. That's it. You don't need to plug it into the wall. You don't need to have current coming into that light bulb. It just, magnetic field causes current to flow in that wire, which then causes the light bulb. So what does that do in the body? It's causing charge in the body. And then that charge in the body is used by the body. That extra energy is now used by the body for all the things it wants to do with it. What it wants to do with it. Not what the magnetic field wants to do with it. What it wants to do with it. So the body's in control. And we know that magnetic fields, in my books, I talk about the actions of magnetic fields physiologically. Increased circulation, decreased inflammation, stimulating stem cells, basically helping the acupuncture points and meridians in the body, balances the acupuncture points and meridians automatically. That's why these very low intensity magnetic fields work, is because they're working on the acupuncture system. They're not strong enough to heal deep in the body. We'll get into intensities right now and shortly. So as the magnetic field pulses into the body, like the wind flowing through the trees, you know the wind's there because the leaves are moving, right? And it could be a weak wind, it could be a little breeze, or it could be a very powerful wind. And same thing with magnetic fields. It can be very powerful and create a lot of charge in the body. Fortunately, magnetic fields are generally extraordinarily safe. And so why are they helpful against EMFs? Because they do all this stuff to help the body be healthier and to be able to react to the environment in a very safe way. So that means that basically magnetic fields are making the body resistant to the effects of these external magnetic fields, environmental magnetic fields. Again, when you're standing in front of a microwave tower right in front of it, then you better be blasting yourself with PEMFs at the same time, right? But generally speaking, if we're surrounded by EMFs, but they're relatively weak. So if we're doing magnetic field therapy on a regular basis, we're basically just, the body's brushing it off. It's just not a big deal at all.
Are you tired of living with chronic pain? Medication only masks the symptoms, but real healing starts at the cellular level. I'm Dr. William Pawluk, the leading expert on PEMF therapy. Pulsed electromagnetic field therapy is a science-backed, drug-free solution that helps reduce pain, speed up recovery, and improve overall health, right from the comfort of your home. Take advantage of an exclusive 10% discount on drpawluk.com PEMF systems. visit drpawluk.com, that's drpawluk.com, to register and claim your savings. This limited time offer is available only to registered listeners. Don't miss your chance to experience the benefits. Terms and conditions do apply. Don't just manage pain, transform your health. Visit drpawluk.com today, and let's get started on your healing journey together.
What about when it comes to the brain? You mentioned these benefits of increased circulation, of reduced inflammation. These are things that come up a lot when we're talking about the causes of Alzheimer's. Is it safe to have a PEMF pointed at your brain?
Very good question. So there are FDA-approved machines. I don't know if you care about the FDA or not, but there's a process that you go through to prove that what you're claiming is truly happening. So in other words, I can't make a claim to the FDA. I have to prove it, that it's actually doing what you're saying it's going to do. So the FDA has approved magnetic therapy devices to treat the brain. It's called RTMS or TMS, transcranial magnetic stimulation. And these are high-powered machines. And how do they work? You actually put a coil up against the head over the motor cortex, right? So right here is what we call the motor strip of the brain.
Above the ear.
Above the ear. So that motor strip basically is what controls our hand movements and our body movements. So the brain tells the body move. It tells the body which part of the body to move and how much to move and so on. So the brain's doing that. So what happens is that if you put a coil over that area and you turn up the intensity really high, you can actually cause contractions of the opposite hand. And they actually do that on purpose. They stimulate the brain, and that's called the motor threshold. So the brain gets stimulated now, and then the hand moves. Okay, that's called the motor threshold. So now what we do is move that coil to the front of the head to treat for depression. And we actually increase the intensity by another 20%.
Wow. So this is significant.
It's huge. And PEMFs were developed to basically undo the need for convulsive therapies, ECT, electroconvulsive therapy, right? For treatment-resistant depression, for psychosis, for other needs. So magnetic field therapy undoes that horrific way of treating the people, which causes muscle spasms and contractions. It's actually causing a major seizure, right? So magnetic field therapy has replaced it. And now you have a tool that you can fine-tune a contraction in a part of the body. But you're not going to continue to do that. You're not going to keep going back to the motor cortex to do that. You go to other parts of the brain that you're treating then for specific purposes, like treating depression. But then you can use it for Alzheimer's, you can use it for Parkinson's and MS and neurodegenerative disorders, brain injuries, basically anything that's going on in the brain that's not healthy. But even a healthy brain that wants to be even more healthy, even more active, you can use PEMF to do that too.
So at a cellular level, what's happening here?
Okay, so in the books, both books, the Power Tools book and the Supercharge Your Health book, I outlined the different actions of magnetic field. So we mentioned some of them. Improved circulation, reduced inflammation, increased oxygenation to the brain, increased oxygen delivery to the brain, increased electrical responsiveness of the brain, controlling the brain frequencies. So if all of a sudden the brain has more juice in it, if you will, right, then the brain can function better. You can control frequencies. You can stimulate stem cells, so you can actually stimulate brain repair. And then there's this wonderful term called plasticity. So PEMFs increase brain plasticity. They increase the ability of the brain to take in new information, process it, and then produce a value from it, produce some kind of action that you might want. Memory, for example, or mood changes, for example, or focus or concentration, or sleep, for that matter. So you can do all of these different things just by stimulating the brain in the right way. And so again, 27 actions. There's no point going through all the different actions of them, but circulation is a big one. Inflammation is a big one. Increased plasticity is a big one. Gene changes is a big one. Stem cells is a big one. All of these are done by the PEMFs. Actually, they're done by the brain, and all the PEMFs are doing is stimulating the brain, and the brain says, okay, I need more stem cells, or I need more circulation, or I need more anti-inflammatory action, or I need more calcium movement in the brain, whatever. So the brain decides what it's going to do with it.
And to help our listeners understand, what's the difference between this and like neurofeedback, for example? And what effect does PEMF have on brain waves?
So I've been trained in neurofeedback. I have a lot of neurofeedback equipment sitting there gathering dust. I was intrigued by neurofeedback. I thought, well, with neurofeedback, I can really make a difference. But I discovered that neurofeedback typically is relatively passive, and it's very slow. It takes a lot of sessions. Most of the time, it takes a lot of sessions. It can take anywhere between 20 to 50 to 70 sessions of neurofeedback.
I've had patients have 90 sessions of neurofeedback and not have any benefit.
And not any benefit. Because what the neurofeedback has to do is it has to reposition parts of the brain and the brain's functions. But then that repositioning of brain functions is in an environment of a brain that's fighting against it. It's trying to do something else. So what I realized is with the frequency changes of PEMFs, with EEG, quantitative EEG, so I can do brain mapping, right? Say, well, this part of the brain has too much beta, this part of the brain has too much alpha, this part of the brain has too much delta, and so on. So we can say, okay, those parts of the brain that have too much or too little, we can then tune the brain with PEMF therapies into those frequencies that relate to those brainwave patterns. So you can restore the brain like that. And you may only need 5 or 10 treatments. Now, if you combine PEMF therapy with neurofeedback or other neuroplasticity work, it'll work much faster, much better, much faster.
Wow. Okay. And I'm sure if you combine it with enough nutrients and enough sleep and some of those.
Well, so you can't build a house without bricks and mortar, right? You have to have the nutrients. You can't fix something that needs calcium or that needs proteins or it needs fats. If you don't have those basic substrates in place, then the body or the brain in this case does not have the equipment or the tools that it needs to be able to do the fixing. And then so you have basic function, we have basic supplies to the brain, then you have the functional parts of the brain. But then you also need to stimulate the brain. You need to activate. And that's where neuroplasticity comes in. You have to activate the brain. So if I want to build memory, what do? If I just sit there, okay, I'm going to build memory. Okay, where's the memory coming from? Here is it. I can't see memory. Where is the memory? So you have to do something to produce the memory in the brain. You have to give the brain the memory that it needs. But you need the plasticity and you need the circulation and you need a healthier functioning brain to be able to take that memory, consolidate it, put it into place, and then be able to allow the brain to pull it back out when it's needed, right? So PEMFs work along that whole spectrum, that whole process. So magnetic field therapy activates the nutrients. It activates and amplifies the anti-inflammatories. It improves the neuroplasticity. As the brain now wakes up, so okay, now I have energy. Now I can do my job. I can learn. I'll give you an example of brain stimulation. We have a machine called the Flex Pulse that has a bunch of, and I helped to design the Flex Pulse based on my training in neurofeedback. I said, okay, I want alpha, I want beta, I want delta, I want gamma, I want all these different frequencies, but individually. I don't want them to be jumbled.
Can you describe the brain waves and what they kind of like beta? I think of beta as being a little bit more excitatory, a little bit more stressed maybe. And then theta is very creative, very relaxed state. Can you just kind of break them down for us real quick so that people can know what you're talking about there?
Sure. I think it's very important actually. And then when it comes to Alzheimer's, again, that's even more important in many ways. So let's start with gamma. Gamma is a more recently discovered brainwave pattern. So gamma is where the frequencies of the brain are moving from the back to the front. Gamma is high frequencies, 40 hertz, around 40 hertz, 40 to maybe around 100 hertz cycles per second. So the brain waves are in patterns. They are in waves, unlike PEMFs. The brain is in waves, but PEMFs coming into the brain at a specific pulse rate begins to move those frequencies in the brain into whatever direction you're trying to coax it. You can't control it, but you can coax it. So what happens then is gamma is very high alertness, it's very high awareness, it's integrative. It's taking all these inputs, the sensory inputs typically that we have into the body, whether it's sound, light, color, heat, whatever, any kinds of sensory inputs. And it's integrating those sensory inputs and distributing them into different parts of the brain. So people who do a lot of meditation are often in 40 hertz. They're often in gamma frequencies. Professional meditators, people who do a lot of meditation are often, their brains are cycling at 40. So their brains are like optimized in a sense. The next level down, if you want to call it down, but the next level in frequencies is beta. So beta goes from something like 13 hertz to 23 hertz approximately, or let's say up to 40. So that's alertness. You're in beta. And hopefully the people in the audience who are listening are in beta. They're integrating, they're listening, they're learning, they're processing, they're understanding, they're trying to memorize. That's beta. That's alert consciousness. All right. Doing arithmetic, doing your QuickBooks, doing your analysis and reading and integrating and writing a paper. That's beta. Then we have alpha. Alpha is basically what I call a neutral state. When I watch a dog or a cat just sitting there, their eyes are open and they're sitting there and they're looking and they may be scanning. Their eyes may be moving back and forth. They're just taking it in. They're not planning anything. They're not hungry. They're not going to somewhere to eat. They're just watching. That's the observer state. So when we're in alpha, we're relaxed. It's a relaxed state. It's not asleep and it's not alert. It's waiting for input, essentially. Then we go from that and down into, so alpha then basically is from about 8 hertz up to about 10 or 13 hertz. Below that is theta. So theta is the primary frequency for us to fall asleep into. And a lot of people who are doing meditation are often in theta. We'll have to talk about doing meditation in gamma. That's very interesting. Delta. Meditation in delta. That's very interesting. So theta is meditation light sleep. When your head hits the pillow and lights out, the next thing you know, you're awake to go to the bathroom, but you slept for 3 hours. That's theta. Now, below theta is delta. So theta is from like 5 hertz to 8 hertz. Delta is from 1 hertz. 0 is dead. So it can't be 0.
Don't want
right?
that.
It's got to be better. It's got to be more than that. So delta basically is like let's say 1 hertz up to about 5 hertz, 4 to 5 hertz. So those are the different brainwave patterns, and different parts of the brain are in different brainwave patterns. Our whole brain is not always in beta, or isn't always in delta, or theta, or et cetera. We have different parts of the brain that are different frequency sets, and they're designed to be that way, right? The brain has been designed to do that kind of integration with different frequency patterns.
And this is what we would measure on, say, like an EEG.
Or a quantitative EEG where we do the brain mapping. But yes, that's what we measure with EEG. Whether it's 12 lead or 3 lead or whatever number of leads you have. Correct.
Okay. And then in Alzheimer's, what are the typical patterns that show up?
I think it depends on severity. So it's like ADD or autism. An agitated Alzheimer's patient is going to be in beta. Probably not in gamma because they're agitated.
Mm-hmm.
So agitation sort of undoes a whole lot of other stuff. So if they're agitated, they're in beta. If they're sitting there just like a dog or a cat, just looking into the environment, they're basically, blurry-eyed, well, they're probably in alpha, low alpha, maybe even in high theta. So Alzheimer's, depending on how badly they're affected, they can be across the whole range of frequencies. And they are more likely to have more dominant amounts of frequencies for longer periods of time. But early Alzheimer's is not. It's a memory problem mostly, right? But severe Alzheimer's or severe dementias, the brain is sort of taken over. When we have somebody with a brain injury or somebody with encephalitis, and they're basically in coma, there's a good chance that most of the brain function is going to be in delta. When you see a normal person, when you do an EEG and they're almost all delta, their brain is essentially shut down.
Your body was designed to heal, but illness, chronic disease, stress, injury, and time can slow that process down. What if you could restore your body's natural ability to recover, recharge, and feel its best? The key to healing is giving your body the energy to repair itself. PEMF therapy does exactly that, recharging your cells, improving circulation, reducing inflammation, and helping you function at your best. For decades, I've studied this technology, worked with hundreds of medical professionals, and helped thousands of people reduce pain, regain energy, and take control of their health. However, not all PEMF devices are created equal. No one size fits all. We offer personalized consultations so you can find the right device for your needs, backed by real science and trusted results. If you're ready for a real solution, let's talk. Schedule a consultation at drpawluk.com. That's drpawluk.com, because real healing starts at the cellular level.
Okay. And what would cause that?
And well, again, it could be severe head injuries. It could be infections. It could be toxins or toxicities. where you have so much cellular damage in the brain that the brain is just shutting down its functions. It's not that common. We don't really see it that commonly, but obviously in the hospital settings, you're going to see these kinds of people very frequently. You'll see that kind of level of brain function in Alzheimer's units and dementia units. They're nearing the end. So the brain is beginning to just sort of shut itself down.
And so applying PEMF to this sort of dysregulation, if you will, what can we expect to see?
Well, again, there's a spectrum from mild. So you can say mild cognitive impairment is an early component of the progression potentially of Alzheimer's. Now, mild cognitive impairment is a pretty common state for 50-year-olds or 60-year-olds. You go to a room and you forget why you went there, right? You're distracted by something and all of a sudden the memory's gone. So the memory didn't lock in. So that's at the very earliest stages of it. But if you do PEMF therapy with mild cognitive impairment, a certain percentage of those individuals are going to end up having Alzheimer's. They progress. So it's a progressive disorder. And if you have the APOE4 gene, and if you have a bad diet, and you have a lot of inflammation in your body, if you're not getting enough rest, if you're not getting enough activity or exercise, if you're not getting enough stimulation, all of these things tend to cause depression of memory and contribute to mild cognitive impairment. So if you're doing brain stimulation with PEMF therapy, you can stimulate the brain at specific frequencies, but you can also just produce like a RTMS, you can produce a specific brain stimulation that just wakes the brain up in general. PEMF therapy can also make the brain sleepy. A lot of people who do PEMF therapy at bedtime just zonk out. When I do whole body PEMF therapy, I get very relaxed. I can't read. I don't want to read. I don't really care. Right? I started producing a lot of endorphins and enkephalins and serotonin, and I just don't really care anymore. So that's a good place to be now and then, right?
When you want to go to sleep.
Well, especially when you want to go to sleep, or if you want to have a nap in the afternoon, or you want to veg out. You want to go into just a very relaxed state, just tune out for a little while and recharge and regenerate. So the earlier stages of dementia, then you start to have more significant memory changes, right? And you may have behavioral changes as well. Then you start to have problems with anger, you have problems with reactivity to environmental stimuli, you tend to overreact. So there's a progression. So the sooner you start with PEMF therapy in this process, the more you can slow down that progression. So not only can help with memory, because the medications for Alzheimer's disease only help you with memory, right? They basically don't help you with repair or to stop the progression, right? They just catecholamines just help the memory process temporarily and partially. And they're toxic.
Unfortunately,
right?
Yeah.
So PEMF therapy combined with nutrition, combined with brain exercises, right? All of these things work together. PEMF therapy enhances everything you do, makes everything you do work better.
Got it. Well, that is exciting and very hopeful. So how do people find out about getting the right PEMF device for them? Because there's a spectrum of these devices as well.
There's a huge spectrum and it's very confusing. So actually, if you go to drpawluk.com, to my website, drpawluk.com, you'll find a huge number of resources about what PEMFs can do. We mentioned the 2 books. So if you want to geek out a bit, there's 500 references. You can find out the science of it with Power Tools for Health. It's got practical information too, but not as practical as the new book, Supercharge Your Health, which describes the mechanisms of action. But we now get into, in the Supercharge Your Health book, I get it more into what kind of device should you consider for different kinds of problems. So I actually review 80 different health conditions and make a recommendation for the kind of device that's going to work best for that condition. So you could have local magnetic field therapy that just treats, say, a tennis elbow or a carpal tunnel problem, et cetera, or a lower back. And they're very inexpensive, typically, much less expensive. Now, when you want to do a more in-depth treatment like a brain, now you need higher intensity. So why do you need higher intensity? Because magnetic field therapy drops off in intensity just like light and cold and heat and sound. Farther you are away from that stimulus, then the more rapidly it drops off. And it drops off extraordinarily fast. So if you want to treat the brain and we want to reduce inflammation, so to reduce inflammation in the brain, which is a common cause of Alzheimer's, right? But if you want to reduce inflammation, you want to treat across the brain. So a 4,000 Gauss magnetic field on one side of the brain will drop off to 15 on the other side of the brain. So 15 Gauss is the optimal level of magnetic field stimulation to reduce inflammation. through the adenosine receptor. And that's covered in the Supercharge Your Health book. There's an appendix about that. It's also on the website. If you want to do a search on that, you can do a search on adenosine, inflammation, and pain, and it gives you tables on what kind of magnetic device you need for the intensity, for where you're trying to treat. So you have to figure out where you're treating. You have to know where you're treating, and then you pick the right machine that's got the intensity that you need to start with. If you're treating, again, an elbow for a tennis elbow, all you need is about 15 Gauss. You may get by with 40 Gauss or 50 Gauss, but you may need something stronger. So if you are concerned about Alzheimer's disease, then you need a more high-powered machine. You can do something to stimulate the frequencies that we talked about. So one of the stories I'm going to tell you is I had a machine that was only about 200 Gauss, and I had to pick up my daughter at the airport at 2 o'clock in the morning. She was supposed to come in at 8:30, but her flights got delayed because of weather, and so I had to pick her up at 2 o'clock in the morning, and I need to do my job in the next morning. And so at 2 o'clock in the morning, do I drink coffee or do I get road drowsiness and I start to nod off? Because I had to drive 50 miles each way. So I said, okay, well, I have the right tool, PEMF therapy. So the Flex Pulse has a 23 hertz frequency, has a 23 hertz program. So put one coil of the Flex Pulse at the back of my neck behind what we call the reticular activating system, which is one of the alertness control systems in the brain. And it was like, okay, I'm awake. I wasn't buzzed. I wasn't jazzed up like you would with coffee. And as soon as you stop it, the brain reverts back to where it wants to go. So I was alert the whole time I went to get my daughter, drove back, no problems, no nodding off, had a stimulating conversation with my daughter. And then as soon as I got home, I took it off. And then within 10 minutes, I was in bed.
Wow. And did you feel okay the next day?
Oh, great.
But magic. It sounds like complete magic to be able to be awake when you want to. And then jet lag. I want to take it with me on my trip. It sounds like
yes. And for jet lag, I have a frequency I call flying delta. So especially if I'm flying across the country, I'm doing it, and you especially, you're flying back east, you're going to go the wrong way through the time zones. Right? But yes, the Flex Pulse allows you to pick the frequency that you want to do what you want with the brain. So if you want to be asleep, you should be using delta. If you want to be alert, you should be using beta. If you want to just be relaxed and tuned out, then use alpha, right? If you're a very anxious person, I had a patient who saw me who was very, very anxious. And she had a 1 hour visit scheduled. She walked in, she sat down, and literally within 2 or 3 minutes, she started pacing. She got up and started pacing.
Poor thing.
Really, she was extraordinarily anxious. So I said, okay, I'm going to treat her with magnetic. I pulled out my Flex Pulse, put it on the back of her neck, like I did for waking. And in this case, I put her on theta. I wanted to decompress her. I wanted to crash her quickly, right? So she put it on the back of her neck, continued pacing, and literally within 2 or 3 minutes, sat down on the chair. I could see the elevator going down.
Wow. And she didn't have to swallow a pill, take a drug, take anything with side effects.
Exactly. So I asked her at the end, what was your stress level when you first sat down out of 10? And she said 7. If somebody had asked me, I would have said 13.
About her.
About her, exactly.
Yeah. So
at the end of the visit, I said, well, what are you now? And she said 3. She was delirious.
Wow.
She was really happy. So she bought a machine so she could deal with her anxiety,
get some relief. Yeah.
So that's how quickly it can change the status of the brain in terms of the brain waves. It's very safe.
Wow. How incredible. And we know anxiety has a lot to do with Alzheimer's as well. That really sets us up if we're in a high stress state all the time. Our brain doesn't get a chance to recuperate, recover, get all of the benefits of a more relaxed, or rest, digest, and heal state.
You're overstimulated by adrenaline. Yeah. You're not producing enough parasympathetic balancing to your brain. And that the adrenaline then over time, because it's a major stressor, it causes increases in cortisol, changes basically the brain frequencies and patterns. It tires out the brain essentially.
Yeah. And there's direct implications for the hippocampus structurally, as well as the amygdala and the limbic system. So
when you're stressed, you don't remember.
Right. I mean, we've all had that experience, right? Stage fright is that classic example, but there's a lot of others. And many of us can recall that time that we felt stressed and couldn't recall our words, couldn't recall somebody's name. And over time,
if you're entering into memory impairment, if you're entering into Alzheimer's, early Alzheimer's or mild cognitive impairment, then reducing stress is a major tool right? To help you
Right.
to maintain memory.
Wonderful. Well, that is so hopeful and so exciting. So drpawluk.com, drpawluk.com, right, is where people can find out more. And then your 2 books. So you share the names of those again.
So the one I would recommend the most, is the Supercharge Your Health with PEMF Therapy.
Fantastic.
That's got the tables and the protocols, and it's got a lot more practical information. Has no science. If you want to be geeky, if you want to really read the science, then I would suggest you get the other book, which is Power Tools for Health. The combination is very helpful because you don't have the protocols in the Power Tools for Health book.
Okay, great. So get them both and geek out with Dr. Pawluk and get your brain healing with PEMF. I love it. Thank you so much, Dr. Pawluk. It's just a pleasure to connect with you every time. I so appreciate your wisdom and enthusiasm for this. It's infectious. Thank you.
Thank you. Well, I need to be infected as well with memory.
Thanks for joining me on the PEMF Effect. I hope today's conversation gave you new tools, insights, and inspiration to take control of your health. If you enjoyed this episode, don't forget to subscribe, leave a review, and share it with someone who could benefit from PEMF therapy and holistic healing. Your body has the power to repair, recover, and thrive. Sometimes it just needs the right charge. Until next time, stay curious, stay proactive, and keep powering up to better health.